I can sort of tell you there. But this seems to be the big development.
Let me ask you 2 or 3 questions, Fred. From what I'm hearing from you, and I don't know if that is specifically mentioned in the case, is that the quality is the major topic here, because the quality will define the characteristic of the flower. Correct. That will fit the consumer demand. Okay, and that could be one or more of the characteristics that are inherent in the same flower, like the scent, lifespan, scent, size, type, rareness, or how rare is the flower, and things like that. Okay, is that correct?
Yeah, that's not in the case. So from that angle, I know you and I have a bit more of a marketing business background.
Yes.
It's written from a cluster perspective. So
yes, I know.
There's not much in it there, and so we hope maybe this year to have at least a good version of the luxury flower case a little bit ready, but which at least will bring that forward as a point of attention. But you're absolutely right that notion is becoming key.
Yeah, okay. So another question about the internationalization of the company is that mainly what they do is they perform strategic alliances with different players. You know, not only growers, but also companies that provide services, technology, know-how, logistics, information technology, and many other concepts. Is that correct, my understanding?
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. So that's what they do. And it's not as broad as an ecosystem, if you want to talk theory, you know, but of course it's an ecosystem. But from a strategic angle, it's not that they say, let's create an ecosystem and then it will, no. They are very specific on their collaborations. They're very specific. It looks a little bit more like IT type based collaborations than a very broad system. So absolutely. So you see a sort of a grouping where they can be part actually of multiple groups. That's what they do. And so it's a lot in collaboration. And trying to work with that. Yeah.
This cooperative can be called a trading company?
Well, trading companies are part of it, but in flowers you must be certain of the quality and the continuation of supply.
Okay.
And it's very, and it's a fresh product. It is still a fresh product, and so you see people from the seed. Let's say they have a new rose. Let's give that example, which have some benefits and some consumer angles, and they look at the traditional supply chain and say that's not what we're going to do. But they still need people that are going to sell, buy, package, market. And are you going to do that on the internet, or are you going to make a swatch watch out of it, or what are you going to do with that specifically? So they're sort of creating their own. So it's a little bit broader than what at least I traditionally know as a trading.
Okay. Do you know how many members participate in the cooperative right now?
6,000.
6,000.
And most of them are still a member. But the degree of membership is changing, and you see some people with certain types of flowers, or very big ones, for instance, Chrysanthus, that you know, we cannot strike a deal with you, it's going to take us too much time, we want to leave. And then they say, you leave, but then when they leave, say, yeah, but we still want to use some of the services of the auction. And then they say, no. So no, we want to pay for it. That doesn't matter. You're not allowed to use this because you don't want to be in a collective, which is fine. We can't come up with a specific deal, and we're not willing. It's sort of a Brexit hard way. You want a divorce? Fine, but we are not going to work, which is quite unusual. But that's what's going to happen. And I see some of them say, probably not a good timing. So it's a sort of in between. But it's clear that for most companies, large companies in the strategic angle, the auction becomes less relevant, but still relevant.
Okay, I understand. Now, this is another question about internationalization. This cooperative, do they own land, growers, or something outside the Netherlands?
The auction doesn't own any doesn't own growers. Growers are individually owned. They have their own PLC or their own
Okay.
legal entity. These entities, these combinations of growers do. So they do own farm, or they do own shares, or the Dutch that bought the land. So in Kenya, most is owned by what the Dutch have. It's owned by the Dutch. However, the Kenyan government is not very
happy with it.
Yeah, they're very happy with it, but we don't know if we can sensibly predict the behavior of the Kenyan government. So from a business angle, that makes it very difficult. You know, that can be nationalized and denationalized all the time. So you don't. So actually, it's owned, it's controlled, and whether it should be 49% or 100%, that's not for the Dutch per se an issue. But the ownership is with these firms, and the auction may only have, let's say, a strategic project where temporarily they build something up, and then the moment it becomes self-sustaining and has a margin, it becomes a private entity. And so they say, you know, for instance, if they have a new flight route and it's working, then they're going to give it to Transavia. And they need to pay something for it, but it's not really that much. So it's actually, so the auction is not within the competitive space with that. But these groups are taking very strategic positions, and more and more so. Does it help you?
Yes. That's helping. Isabel, you want to make a question or a comment?
Yes. How many countries to participate in this cooperative?
It's a good. I don't have the accurate number. I hope you can see it on their website, because I know that in terms of not of the membership. If it's not the membership, but the business transactions, it's lots of countries that are bringing in stuff. But you're talking specifically about the membership structure. I don't know that, but it may be on their website. It's certainly more than 20, if you would look at nationalities. But if it's 50 or 30, I don't know, but it's certainly more than 20.
Yeah. Okay. Any other? Natalia, I saw that you arrived. Do you want to make a comment or question, Natalia?
No. If I understand, the supply chain is the most important part of this internationalization. Supply chain is a specific point that between a customer and the providers around the world.
Correct. Yeah, so the answer is correct. I mean, you grow the stuff, and then it needs to be, at the moment of truth, delivered to a consumer. And that, you know, and if it's a fresh product or a semi-fresh product, how do you get that arranged? Specifically, if it's going to be in a bouquet, right? And it has a 7, maybe 8 days of face time. You know, so this logistics is absolutely a key thing. So you're right with that. However, that's underpinning. That's why the collaboration needed to be, right? Because nobody could. And then you would have the transaction mechanism where you have the auction, and then you have the financial mechanism, so you don't run the risk. And then you have the collaboration and the innovation. So they're different systems. They used to be all of, let's say until 2000, they were sort of all in one stack. They didn't even distinguish between it. It was sort of, yeah, let's do that. But what you see, let's say 2005, 2006, you see a decoupling of these systems, right? Why would we want to have logistics where we have the auction, where we have, doesn't make sense. We can do that electronically. So it doesn't make sense to ship everything to Aalsmeer. Can we not do that more efficient? Why should the growers bring it here if we can just electronically put it up? So it has been uncoupled. And you're referring to, Isabel, is absolutely correct. This is always underlying the economics here. It's the transaction instead of a margin with these flowers. It's as simple as that. But the way it's delivered is different, and it's decoupled. And with digitalization, it becomes even more uncoupled. So there's but still, it's quite expensive, right? To have a bouquet put together and then put in a car and then delivered to a consumer if they're willing to pay €6 or €7. You know, that's really
expensive.
Yeah, it's expensive. It's not easy to get enough volume, and you cannot do it in the DHLs or something like that because flowers will. So so you're absolutely right, Isabel. In the supply chain and in the growing, there is. What are we going to do with this? We're not going to get fresh flowers out of our 3D printer. I do not recognize it as sensible. Who knows one day? But there is this. So far, there is this.
You need to have the physical product,
Well, people want to see it grown somehow. Isabel, does that help? But you had a reason for asking me that. So what was your thinking? I'm curious about that. Isabel, go ahead.
Let me ask you one of the last questions, Fred. How is Colombia growers involved in this process with the Flora Holland? Because the students ask me about that, and I don't have a lot of information. Do you have information?
I don't have it here, but what I do know is almost all of the Colombian. I know a couple of things. From a network perspective, these relationships are very close. So I know that most of the important Colombian growers come to the Netherlands whenever there is this yearly, auto, what you need to know. I know a lot of people from the Netherlands fly to Colombia and work with them, and one way or the other. So that's what I know in terms of knowledge, in terms of growing, in terms of things like that. What I know is there's not much, as far as I'm aware of, there's not much ownership of Dutch in Colombia of farms. There may be political risks, there may be historical risks. There is much more ownership that I'm aware of in Ecuador, where they picked up the good pieces of land and made sure that they made a lot of money. There's a lot of collaboration in technologies and in seeds and in Wageningen and in education and all kinds of things. So it seems to be from Colombia, it seems to be on that level. Also, what seems to be the case in Colombia, but you probably know that better than I do, but that most of the flowers of the growers get their money by exporting flowers on Mother's Day and on Valentine's Day to the US.
Yes, that's true.
So that's a different way of producing flowers than year-round production with some peaks. Right? So they seem to have that, and they seem to be producing more for the local market. That's what I see there. And then from a Dutch perspective, so don't take any offense of that, the level of collaboration seems to be much less. The level of collaboration seems to be much more in lobbying the government, having an association, but not having it so much integrated in the growers' individual business models. That seems to be a little less.
I understand.
From a Dutch perspective.
Good.
I'm not saying it's wrong or right, but that's basically what we think we see. And what I always heard as a joke from the Dutch on the Colombia, they say, so I'm just giving you the Dutch perspective here, right? Okay, so Colombian growers prefer to sell their roses to traders in Jamaica or whatever, and then it's going to be sold at Mother's Day and Valentine's Day. And if they get their money back, well, they're going to get their money back, but the time they're going to get it back, it can be as much as 6 months or 7 months. So they have, from a Dutch perspective, a huge credit interest risk. But somehow they find that more attractive than having the Dutch system of saying, we need to do it in the auction. We have this pool of money. When you sell the stuff, you're going to get paid within 6 days, and the risk is for the overall construction. And sometimes with Jorge Ramirez, I try, and he also looked at me as if I was crazy. I said, you know, so you want the Colombians to send their flowers to this strange magician process in the Netherlands, and then if you tell them that if the price is not right, it's going to be destroyed, and we don't trust them to do some magic there, and then you get paid within 6 days. There must be a trick, and there is no trick.
I know.
There is no trick, but they say this cannot be true. So I catch you. So there's a very interesting. At least that's what the Dutch keep telling me on. From a Dutch business sense, it doesn't make any sense to do it this way. But for Colombia, a contract is valued more than the trust in the business relation. And the Dutch are traditionally more into trust in a business relation, although that's changing also. Okay, does it help you, Isabel, as well?
Isabel?
Yes.
Does it? Okay.
Yeah.
I think that the relationship between Colombia and Netherlands in this product is very important. That our sector, our this kind of sector in Colombia.
It's very close. It's very close. And in general, Dutch, including me and people in, let's say, South or Latin America or the maximum in North America, although the cultures are quite different, the relationship seems to be working quite well on a personal level, because both cultures seem to at least value very much from a trust angle, or from I can only work with my family angles. That seems to work reasonably well, but slowly from a Dutch perspective.
Yeah. Good. Fred, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I hope to have you one day here in Colombia too, as well as we have in Mexico, in Mexicali and Tijuana, and you can come eventually here to Medellin, to CEPA. CEPA and CETIS are working together to develop a similar relationship that we have already CEPA with you and other professors. So it would be very nice to invite you eventually here. Okay, I'm sure that the administration here will consider that. Okay.
Yeah, so my willingness is there. You know that. More than happy to do that. Whether it's in this way with students, or I'll let you know when I may be in Colombia, because there's a couple of things from the healthcare perspective. In Bogota. That at least they wanted me to be back, but if I'm there and I don't have a clue about geography, but
well,
I'll let you know if that.
It's an hour flight from Bogota to Medellin. Okay. Probably. Yeah, and you will find that it's a very fine city, you know, as well as Bogota. So there's not a big problem in these areas. Okay.
And important, the food's good.
That's
important.
That's true. That's true.
Okay.
Yes, thanks a lot for this space and share with us your academic work, and welcome to CEPA.
Okay, thank you so much, and let's stay in touch with Jorge, and let's see, you know, if you're going to come to Europe, let me know. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Fred, try to meet you again whenever in Mexico, in Europe, or here in Colombia. Okay.
Okay. Thanks, my friend. See you later. Bye.
Bye-bye. Good luck. Thank you.